Alright, it's kind of a nasty, drizzly. It's supposed to look like this and rain on and off all day, so good day to work on equipment under a roof. So, got my radiator back from the rebuild shop. All the solder joints on the frame were basically broke. The fan shroud was coming off. This bottom reinforcing plate that protects the bottom tank, it's actually a common problem on at least the 4150 and the 4180. I haven't been around a 210 or a 175 enough to know if they changed how this mounted and got it off, because this basically sets right down on the skid pan, and it's common for these things to rust out. And then you got to watch it because this rusts out and then the lower tank starts corroding, and that's partly what killed the original radiator that was in this when I got it. I bought this as rebuilt, and whoever rebuilt it did not do a very good job. The core in it is relatively new-ish, but the whoever soldered it back together, it did not do a good job. So that's got to go in. I got hydraulic oil so that I could drop that gear oil contaminated hydraulic oil out of it and replace it. And there's a couple other odds and ends I want to do to it that probably aren't going to get done today because I need to make some parts, or get a part made. The belly pan that goes under the engine, this guy right here, it was missing when I got the tractor, and we got this off of a parts tractor, and it was broke and cracked when I got it, and I welded it back together and it broke again, and I added this piece and it broke again, and I welded it back together, and now it's all broke out right there. It's just it wasn't built heavy enough for what it needs to do and to take the vibration of that 3208. So I'm gonna have a new one lasered out of 1/8 inch plate. And the way this one works, it actually, there's a second skid pan that also acts as a cross member, and the way that one works, it actually slides in and pinches between this and the frame, which is kind of unhandy. So I'm actually gonna have that one, a new one made up with a Z bend in it, so it'll follow the frame, then come down and out, so that it actually goes over top of this skid pan. Because you've got to take this one off more than you got to take this one off. So it'll make everything a whole lot easier to do it that way. So, but that's gonna be later. And then I also have to weld in, there's supposed to be a cross member, or not really a cross membered, but like a strap that spans the entire frame right here. When I got the tractor, it was missing. I didn't have anything to copy, so I just welded 2 tabs on it, and that one broke off. But later found out this is actually supposed to be one piece all the way across the frame with a 3rd bolt hole in the middle to help support that plate, or that cover. So I got to make one of those to weld in, get a new skid pan made for it. I don't know why whoever had this thing chopped the frame all up, because this cross piece was missing. That X brace right there had one of the it was cut in the center. One leg was completely missing, and then it was cut off the frame over there, so it was just 2 pieces hooked. It was, I don't know what I don't know this poor tractor. So, but Dad's coming over to help me set that radiator in, because it was about all I could do to get it out by myself without hurting something, because it's a tight fit. I was trying to take that out with taking as few pieces off as possible, so you're able to do it, but it's tight. So when Dad gets here, we can set that radiator back in, and it's all just putting pieces on from there. And I'll have to I should have made a list. I need some new bolts because some of the bolts I took out hadn't been taken out before and they were in rather rough shape. So I'm gonna need to get some new bolts to put it back together too. Okay, radiator set back in there, loose. Everything is gonna go on loose before I tighten anything up, and there's a reason. This was a terrible, terrible way to mount a radiator. The original radiator out of this was basically falling apart in the same way that this one had, on top of the fact that the core was rotten. So, put it back together, when I got the new radiator, put it back together the way it came apart, because at that point, didn't know all the 4150 isms that I know now. But basically, you got this you got these tabs welded to the frame here, and then you've got this weldment that consists of these two posts, this horseshoe bracket, and then across the top here, you've got this bracket, which has got two bolts to hold the top of the grill shroud on, but you got this big weldment bracket that goes up top. So you've got all these weldments that obviously had to have been made in a fixture, but stuff's still gonna walk around because of heat stress and stretching and shrinking and whatnot once you get it out of the fixture. And they put all that in, and then they hold the radiator together with 5/16 bolts, literally sucking this frame into the radiator. And you got an air gap here, you've got an air gap here. You see there's a bow here, like this bracket's wonky. And it's not like you can straighten any of the bows out of it, because down here your distance is fixed because you're bolted through to these brackets which pull out on it. You got these bolts that are trying to suck this frame back in toward the radiator. You've got these shims that are supposed to go in here, which I'm going to modify these shims a little bit, but you can see we're snug up top, loose on bottom. These shims I'm going to modify. It is a real pain in the rear putting these things in, so what I'm going to do is slot the holes, so that now that I've got the bolts in, all you got to do is slide them in. It is not fun putting this thing together, trying to put these things in loose and line these holes up and the holes in the radiator and everything. It's not fun. So these holes are getting slotted. So I got to get those holes slotted. I got to get that top bracket off of the grill. Kinda. That's also where this is a nightmare, is because these holes up here are slotted. These holes down here that mount the bottom of the grill are slotted, and basically this entire radiator mounting, grill mounting, surge tank mounting, air cleaner mounting has like half the holes slotted to make up for stuff not quite being in alignment, and the radiator suffers the consequences. I'm pretty sure that's what was tearing the frame of this thing apart, is you got all these weldments that are not perfectly in line with each other, and there's slop in the frame, and when you tighten everything up, the radiator tries to pull everything in, but the radiator is not made a radiator is not made to be a structural member, because it's all just soldered together, sheet metal and copper. So over time and vibration, the solder joints start to break down. You've got tension the radiator's trying to hold everything in tension pulled together, and over time as the solder joints start to break down, everything just goes and releases and goes to where it wants to be, and the radiator frame destroys itself in the process, because this solder joint for this brace was broke, this one was broke, this bottom one was broke. They were all broke in the back. The fan shroud, which is soldered to the back of the radiator, obviously was falling off, and all of that is consequences of how they mounted this radiator. Like I say, it's a common problem because the radiator that came out of it was breaking in the same exact way. Just didn't know at the time that it was a problem. Now I know it's a problem. So you gotta put this bracket across the top and get it tight so that you know how much you need to shim this, but you can't just do it loose from the grill surround because these holes are slotted, so no matter where you put it, it's not going to be right until it's bolted to the grill, and the grill surround, and the grill surround's bolted to the this is going to be, it's going to be interesting doing this. So, but first things first, I gotta slot these holes, and I'm just going to take a slitter wheel and a grinder and slot them, and then they will just slide in from the front and make that part easier. And then the rest of the shims that I make are probably just going to be squares with one hole in them that you can slide in, because obviously you're not going to need as much shim up here as you're going to need down here. And hopefully in doing it this way, we can take a bunch of stress off this radiator and it won't fall apart again. Okay, so now these shims are slotted, so rather than fighting trying to get everything, all the holes lined up and balance the radiator and balance shims and what have you, now they just slide in like so. Stay in there. Maybe. Really? Okay, well, I'll set you there for a minute. This one's already in. As you can see, it's pinched up here at the top, and it's loosey-goosey down here at the bottom. So there's going to need to be another shim added here and another shim added here, and we're going to have to figure out what we can do to take some of the stress off this radiator. Alright, the radiator's back in. The only thing that is tight is this top crossover piece. As you can see, with the width of that, the width on this isn't too terrible. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's still not right. I'm tight on the shim, or snug on the shim at the top over here. Up here, it could probably use about one more piece, that thickness. Here in the center, about 2 more pieces, and down here at the bottom, about 1 more. And then down on this side, it needs 1 more in the center and 2 more at the bottom. And that should get everything to tighten up without twisting or torquing or pulling on the radiator shell, so that the radiator's not becoming a stress member. But obviously this, the way it's assembled and welded together, makes the top still narrower than the bottom, and there is no way to make the bottom narrower because these are welded into the frame rails, and that's all. You're not making the bottom any narrower short of shimming it. So, and you're not gonna fix this with one piece shims. It's gonna need to be individual shims to take up the slack where it needs to be taken up. So I will probably snake this guy back out of here. So I got it for a template. Actually, hold on a second. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I need 7 shims basically, and that should make us, or put us in a little better shape. It still probably won't be perfect, but this, like I say, is a terrible way to mount a radiator. Never, should have never. It's bad. Stupid design. The other thing I did in putting this back on was I modified it and put this notch in it before this plate just came down and went straight across. And even with the other the original radiator in it, it was rubbing really hard on this overflow nipple. So I notched that so that A, it makes it easier to get to the clamp because that was always really tight, and B, now you're not, if anything's moving or the wrist, by all rights this should move as a unit 'cause it's all bolted together, but if for some reason something happens, you're not rattling around banging on that nipple and breaking it off or cracking a tank or whatever. So I gotta go, we're gonna go to mom and dad so I can make those shims. I gotta grab, these really need to have flat washers on them since they're a slotted hole, so I need flat washers. I need some lock washers. I need one new bolt. And we should be, that should get us good. Once this menagerie is over with, the rest of it's gonna go back together real quick. All right, let's see how we did. This thing will go in there one way and it'll sit there, and the other way it'll fall out. There we go. So I need one up here at the top. Here's my screwdriver. Come on. Okay, there's that, and then I needed, put that on the outside, so we needed one down here at the bottom. And then over here, we needed about one in the center. Because you're better off to be tight and be squeezing the radiator than you are to be loose and be pulling the radiator, because that just don't work all that great. Okay, there's that, and then over here we needed about 2 in the middle. Quit turning. Quit turning. Oops. I wonder if I'm gonna be better off to not do 2 here and do 2 down here. It's kind of what it's looking like. Alright, after a little bit of playing around, this side actually ended up working best with just 1 extra shim in each one. And this side worked out basically like it looked like it was going to. Nothing in the top, 1 in the center, 2 in the bottom, and that side worked out pretty good. So now when you tighten the bolts up, it doesn't really, all you're doing is tightening the bolts up. It doesn't really pull the sides in any. So hopefully that helps keep the radiator from trying to tear itself apart. That was the goal. So now I can go ahead and tighten everything up. I'll have to get the grill surround back on and make sure everything up here, make sure I don't have to bust these bolts back loose, and get this situated, and then everything else can go back together. Okay, this is all back together, ready to dump coolant in it. But before I do that, there's one thing I want to do. The oil cooler hoses on this are the last hoses that haven't been changed, and I figure since we've had the hoses, I don't know what Cat was thinking. These new ones are the nicest shade of blurple you have ever seen in your life, and yeah, I've looked all over. There's nowhere to find them. You can't find anywhere you search that part number. These are what come up. There are no black ones available. These are silicone coated, so paint's not going to stick to them. You could probably get like a hose jacket for it, but you're still gonna, it's just, I guess it is what it is. But the way these are swelling up around the clamps, and just the fact that they've got black paint on them, so they're 40 something odd years old, I figure while I have the coolant drain down, this would be a good time to just go ahead and get them taken care of before we're out in the middle of a field somewhere and blow 5 gallons of coolant everywhere because these hoses let go. There is probably still coolant in here because there's, I don't know if there is a drain plug on the cooler, but okay, I give up. What are you hung up on? There we go. What the? Oh. Well, that's weird. Never seen a 473. Man, they need to make all hose clamps like that. That's a nice way to protect the hose, having that long lead on there. 2 of 74.
Okay, this is probably gonna make a wee little bit of a mess. Yeah, those things are, there's not a whole lot left of those guys. The nice thing about working on this on a dirt floor barn, you just let it drain onto the floor and kick some sand over it, and you don't even got to worry about cleaning up the mess. Okay, this is going to be interesting. The outside one's not so bad. This inside one is going to be interesting. Hopefully those dickheads didn't make it where you physically got to unbolt the oil cooler housing to change this hose, because this part is going to be interesting. Oh, come on, go over for me. Be a good little blurple hose. Get on there all the way, and then we're home free. Okay, that makes me feel better. The old one was so hard I had to cut it to get it off, and when that happened I was like, oh boy, here we go. A simple project is going to turn into a project, but we're golden. All right, those are changed. God, that's ugly. Why can't we just make stuff the color it's supposed to be? Radiator hoses are supposed to be black. That's just what they're supposed to be. No ifs, ands, or buts. Unless it's color matched for whatever build you're doing, but this... And then the other nice thing is off-the-shelf cat parts. Made in China. Thanks a lot, cat. So, anyhow, now upper and lower hoses are hooked up, overflow hoses hooked up, clamps are all on, those are changed, radiator's tight, all the bracket bolts are tight. Should be good to dump the coolant in, and I know it sounds weird but make sure there ain't no leaks. Shouldn't be any leaks, just came back from the rebuilder. All right, coolant's all filled up. I started putting fiberglass back on. I can't call it sheet metal, it's not sheet metal, but started putting panels back on. It's been sitting here gurgling while I've been doing it, so gonna have to, I know I lost some coolant, but it filled up into the surge tank, so there's an air bubble in there somewhere. Gonna have to run it, let the thermostat's open, let it suck that stuff down in, and then we can finish topping it off. But before I run it and get everything warm, I want to do the hydraulic oil, and before I do the hydraulic oil, I want to get the 3-point down. That way the cylinders are drained, because there's a fair bit of oil in those. So I'll fire it up, set the 3-point down. And I can just kind of decide if I just use those buckets or if I mark those for antifreeze only. That way next time I do something like this, I don't have to clean a couple buckets out, because I got plenty of 5-gallon buckets, that's for sure. So let me go see if I got a couple that are already oil buckets, and if I do, we'll use those. Now that we finally got the oil transferring problem isolated down to the power takeoff, ain't no sense in leaving this gear oil contaminated stuff in here, because all that's going to do is make the hydraulics run hot unnecessarily. Even smells like 8090. The smell of dead dinosaur guts. Alright, I got the first bucket in and got the hydraulic system primed back up and 3-point back up. Technically, you're supposed to check the oil in these with a 3-point down. That way the cylinders are empty and the reservoir's full. However, there is enough room in the reservoir, even with the oil hot and expanded, that if you run it at the full level with the 3-point up and you set the 3-point down, there's still plenty of room in the reservoir for the oil coming out of the cylinders. And I just like running it full with the 3-point up, because most of the time with this thing I'm not running the 3-point, I'm just running the hydraulics. So that's why I do it that way. Should need about 2 more-ish gallons. Alright, hydraulic oil's topped off. That's taken care of. That should have been done a while ago, but I kept forgetting about it because it quit being a problem, and then I forgot to change the oil. So that's done. We just need to bleed the air out of the coolant system so I can top that off. I just got the radiator cap on there, just snap past the lock, so it's on there loose. So we can take her and pull her outside the barn so she doesn't smoke the place up. Let her run for a minute. Away from the tires. just let her sit here and idle until the thermostats open up and she burps all the air out. And in the meantime, hopefully I got another. I brought a couple jugs of concentrate. I think I've got an empty antifreeze jug around here somewhere, so I can mix up some 50-50 and take care of some stuff that I don't need. So we'll catch you guys here in a little bit. Okay, the upper radiator hose is warm, which means the thermostat's open, so there's nothing dripping on the ground, there's no leaks, so that's always good. There shouldn't have been, it didn't leak before. All you had to do was fix the frame. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's nothing left in here. Doesn't look like it. Yep, she's empty. So, I got my 50-50 mixed up down here. A little more. Oop. A little more. Just dump the whole gallon in it. I don't know why you will never keep the surge tank full in this thing. It doesn't burn coolant, it doesn't leak coolant, but the surge tank will never be full, or you'll never keep a level in the surge tank. It gets down to the radiator tank because I pulled hoses off and checked it. Because there's a, you can, I don't know if you can see it or not. Oh yeah, right here, this guy. You can pull this guy off the bottom of the tank and use it like a level gauge and see where the coolant ends up in it. And if you pull it off, the coolant is basically like where it should be in the top radiator tank. It goes down to that point. Don't know why it doesn't leak out. It doesn't, I don't know where it goes, but I cannot, it never stays, nothing ever stays in the surge tank. It's weird. But so we're good on coolant now, and now I got another empty jug so I can mix up my other jug of 50-50, and then I'll have all 50-50 laying around, so I don't have to worry about pre-mixing anything anymore. So the side shields can go on that thing, and we are done for the day. These two are something else, I tell you what. Teeter! Don't bite her neck. But anyhow, last thing, actually there's two last things I gotta do to it. Get this taken care of, which I can hopefully get that project moving in the right direction this week. And I completely spaced it until I was putting the side panels back on. It's got another dang crack in the fuel tank. This will make the third one. I think one of the baffles is actually breaking loose inside the tank, and that's what's causing the cracks. But remember when I had that booklet that showed all the service bulletins for the 4150, and remember that fuel tank update? I need to find the newer fuel tank for it that's got the X's stamped in the end caps, and that'll solve that problem. In theory, that's what the manual says, is it corrects that problem. I don't know if it did correct that problem or not, but you trying to find a cold spot? Is that why you're digging? So I need to fix that too. But once that's done, and I get that, once that skid pan's done and I get the cross member welded in like it's supposed to be, and then get that fuel tank crack fixed, then all that's got to happen is the dual's got to go back on, and she's ready for fall. So, and I wasn't gonna mention it, but I'm excited. It's not a done deal. It's far from a done deal, but we're working on coming to a deal. We're in negotiations right now. I may have found a replacement for this. Well, I'm not gonna call it a replacement because I'm not getting rid of this tractor. It's just gonna change jobs. I think I found a replacement for tillage duty. I'll put it that way. And if I do get it, then this is gonna go on the planter. Is gonna be the plan. Like I say, it's not a done deal yet. I had zero intentions of buying any big ticket items this year because grain prices and what have you, especially after the way last fall went and kind of basically just breaking even. But when I was taking the radiator down, I had to I'll give you the short story, because if I end up bringing this tractor home, we can tell you the whole story. But had to take that radiator down to get worked on, and the same day I took that down, there was a farm about 4 miles-ish around the corner from the radiator shop. I'm friends with the people that own it. They watch the channel, and I picked up that seed box to put the wheat in so that the raccoons would quit getting in it. So I'm down in territory I've never driven through before, going down roads I've never driven through before, and I'm driving past this farm and happen to look at the right place at the right time, and I see something that just really just grabs my attention, because I never thought I would see one around here. And next driveway I found, I whipped around and went back to the farm, and long story short, now we're negotiating on a tractor. I'm going to tell you right now, it's a stupid decision. I shouldn't be buying anything like this year, or next year, or probably anytime soon for that matter, but it's one of those deals where I never figured I'd find one around here. It's something I've always wanted. It's going to be a lot more reliable and a lot more suited to the job than this is. It's going to set me up in a position where I have the opportunity to buy some better tillage equipment, specifically a VT tool. And if I get it, I won't have to buy another tractor for 20 years. I'll be between this that I might be purchasing, the 4150, I get 2105 going, and between those three I can probably start semi-retiring the Olivers and just use the whites, because we're getting to the point where parts for some of these things are starting to get a little harder to come by. The 1955 she'll always be working, but like the 1950T, the 1800, some of the older ones where some of the parts are starting to get a little bit more they can start just being toys rather than something to rely on. But I had a price in mind. The guy shot me back. I knew I wasn't going to be able to pay anywhere near market value for it. We're getting way down. We're getting way too far down the story, because if I bring it home we could tell all this. But basically, just know that we're in negotiations. If something does happen, it's probably going to happen closer to fall. Because the guy that owns it, it's been sitting for a while because they outgrew it and quit using it, so it's just been sitting. There's nothing wrong with it, it's just been sitting. And most of what is wrong with it because it's been sitting. It's not like it had a hard life. It's just tractors are like people. You start letting them sit too long and all of a sudden the body starts breaking down. So she needs some love. But the guy said he's got about 70 acres he needs to plow. And he said he's going to do a little bit of work to it that needs to be done to it to make it fully functional and get some of the linkages loosened up that are a little bit stiff and whatnot. And he said if he gets a chance to do all that, we'll hook it onto a plow, take it out in the field, and run it so that I can feel a little bit more comfortable about what I'm getting. And if it looks like it's going to be a tractor that I can bring home, go through, service it, and fix it. There's a couple small things wrong with it that I know of right off the bat, but if it looks like it's going to be a solid horse, then I'll be more comfortable getting closer to the price that he threw at me. And he said he's willing to negotiate and work with me. So, but it's kind of one of those once in a lifetime opportunities, and if I don't take it now, an opportunity like this will probably never come up again, especially not this close to home. And if I don't do it, I'm going to be kicking myself for the rest of my life. So just know that there is possibly another tractor showing up, but we're probably at least a month or so away from it actually showing up. So if it shows up. So we'll see how that goes. But for now, the 150, she's still the main horse. But if we can do something to take a little bit of the load off of her shoulders, it'd probably greatly extend her life. So anyhow, I guess I'm gonna back her back in the barn and put my tools away and finish cleaning up my mess and call her a day. And I think tomorrow I might get some concrete and we'll do a little bit of work on the old chicken coop there and kind of start making some progress towards that. This week, as long as I ordered what I need to start working on the 8700, so hopefully by midweek this week, the 8700 will be going over to Mom and Dad so we can start working on that. Then once that's done, 7300, 8700 is mostly belts. There was, I think, 5 belts on it needed changed. I need to do some work on the rotary screen and just service it, and she should be good to go. The 7300, I went over all the belts. There's no belts bad. I just need to do some measuring, figure out what I need for auger flighting, and I really like to reflight that unload auger. And it needs switch from corn back to beans and oil changed and just going over real quick. But the 7300 doesn't need much either. I'm finally getting them to the point where it's mostly just common maintenance items that need to be done to them come that time of the year. So that's helpful. So we got a little bit left to finish on her. Those two to finish up. The heads don't need anything really to speak of other than a going over. I do need to check the sickles on the grain table because that thing ate a lot of mud last year for, reasons. So I need to check the sickle or the knives on that, make sure they're runnable. They should be. There might be a couple that need changed, but hopefully this week we're gonna be into fall mode. So things are going to start progressing here rather quickly because we're only about 5, maybe 6 weeks away from harvest now. Scary of a thought as that is. So anyhow, I guess that's it for this one. We'll catch you guys on the next one.